What is up, 2K crew? It is Sunday. It is podcast time, and man, have we got a badass show for you today. First of all, we're gonna jump off with probably one of the biggest blockbuster trades in recent memory, and then we're gonna drop some NCAA hoops on your ass because it's the week before or the week in between the championship games and the Super Bowl. So Everybody lock in. We got 2Ks on the phone, and you have found the Turbo and 2K show. It's the Turbo and 2K show. All right. Well, like we promised. Well, before we jump off into anything, let's get 2Ks in here. What's going on, brother?
Not much, man. Not much at all. Yeah, just kind of a bum that and the first time in 17 weeks now, 18, 19 weeks now.
Yeah.
We're not watching football today.
Yeah. The only football thing related was the Pro Bowl thing that they've been. ESPN seems to be rerunning every couple hours.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's that weird week. Like, what do I do with my hands? I don't know. But yeah, winter is officially here in Michigan, ladies and gentlemen. If you didn't stick your head out the window and notice, but yeah, there's a lot of things jumping in. So 2Ks, let's get into it because, man, was this for lack of better terms, this is a motherfucking bombshell.
Mm-hmm.
All of us knew Stafford was getting traded. But we were just waiting on the landing spot in the package that was being accepted. Now, keep in mind, too, what is very curious to me is the package itself. And yes, I'm probably going to say the word package here about 15 times right here in about 20 seconds. But not necessarily the particulars that went with this one, 2Ks, but now we kind of have a gauge as to, all right, well, the Rams gave up this to get Stafford. Whatever suitor that's going to get Deshaun Watson is going to have to up the ante a lot, I think, to get to land Deshaun Watson. Because I think we can kind of all agree that Watson's a better quarterback than Stafford, so much younger. Not taking anything away from Matt Stafford. It's just if you give me the choice, I'm taking Watson all day over Stafford. What about you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, but what it's going to come down to is, what are you going to have to give up to get Watson? And yes, Watson is I mean, he's one of the best in the game, and he's obviously younger than Stafford, and he's under control. But you start thinking about the contract that you're going to take on, and everything that you're going to have to give up in order to get him. Is it worth it? I mean, if you look at the big picture, if you look at what he does on the field, absolutely, he's the better option. He's the better quarterback. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the big picture of what you have to give up and everything that has to fall into place in order to land him, I really question if it's all that worth it. I mean, you're basically, yeah, you can have a great quarterback in Deshaun Watson, but if you don't have any weapons around him, I mean, what is he really then?
He's going to be in the same exact spot
same thing that he's in right now.
Houston. No, I found it, and yes, we will get into the Stafford trade here in a second, ladies and gentlemen. But you want to talk about a haul? I want to say it was Friday. So watching Sports Center and Dan Orlovsky, which I don't know how much of his opinion I value, because he's one of the only people I've ever seen as a professional quarterback accidentally run onto the back of the end zone. But he was saying and it's probably a good reason he's not a GM, especially in New York. He said, if it were me, I would package Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, and 2 first-round picks and send them to Houston for Deshaun Watson.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, that's intriguing. And his rationale actually wasn't bad, because you're going to have to package at least 2 first-rounders to get Deshaun Watson.
Oh, yeah.
At least. Mm-hmm. Daniel Jones is unproven, and Saquon Barkley is going to be his next. They're either going to pay him or he's going to walk. So
I don't even think that's enough of a package to land him.
I didn't think about it that way, but once you start throwing like big star, like ready to play now players' names around like that, I'm like, whoa, holy shit! But mm-hmm. He kind of made sense about it, and I'm like, all right, but like you said, who knows if that's enough? But let's talk about the trade at hand here. And so the Lions are sending Stafford to the LA Rams, which was not. I'm pretty sure wasn't on anyone's radar. Don't you think? 2Ks. I think we listed a bunch of places last week, and
Eh,
LA wasn't
yeah,
one
I
of them.
mean, we didn't really mention it, but I guess when I after thinking about it after it all went down, it really doesn't surprise me. I mean, you look back into the first round of the playoffs and that Rams and Seahawks game, and
Mm-hmm.
I still the question still is in my mind of why, why was Jared Goff not starting that game?
Yep.
What was the reason for it? Obviously he had the thumb injury, but obviously it wasn't that bad because when the injury happened to Wofford or whatever the fuck his name is,
Yeah.
he Goff was ready to go, and Goff went out and did what he needed to do, and ended up winning that game. So the thumb obviously wasn't that bad of an injury if he was able to play through it, and it wasn't even in question the next week in the Green Bay game. So why was he not starting that game? I mean, he's your starting quarterback. He's your franchise quarterback. He was the first pick of the draft.
Paying him a lot of money.
He's your he's your guy, and he's not starting that game because of a thumb injury. Something was there. Something was happening there. And I just think that that team has obviously they've signed the players, they've made the trades, they've done what they want to do to win now, and you got to think Sean McVay just did not think that Jared Goff was his guy.
No, and I I want to say that, I mean, obviously I agree with you. However, they were playing Wofford because of his mobility, his
Mm-hmm.
escapability, his plays outside of the pocket, and I don't think Stafford's your man for that.
Mm-hmm.
But in my mind, is Stafford an upgrade from Jared Goff? Yes, yes, I do. I think that the Lions got obviously Jared Goff. They got 2 first round picks and a third round pick, if I'm not mistaken. Did they overpay
Mm-hmm.
for him? Time will tell. Time will tell. However, you and I, since we started this podcast, going on almost 2 years now, you and I have been Stafford proponents. We're not the
Mm-hmm.
ones that are bashing Stafford. We're not the ones saying that Stafford's the reason the Lions are losing. So, being a Stafford fan, I like the fit. I like the fit a
Absolutely.
lot. I think he's going to, for the first time in his whole career, is going to have it's going to be the best stable running backs he's ever had.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the best offensive line he's ever had. Now, granted, he going back to the days when he had Megatron and a couple other receivers. This might not be the best receiving core. However, they're very serviceable. They're very, I mean, you could get a whole lot out of them.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, that defense is fucking ferocious. Definitely the best defense he's ever played with.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing is the division that they're playing in. It's very, very tough. That division is tough. So, is this the piece to put them over the edge? Time will tell. However, I think they're getting closer to that with Stafford,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they're doing it. They're doing it the right way because at this point, especially where that defense is, the window is closing. The window's not staying open forever. So to draft a quarterback and then develop them, I think is the wrong way to do it. So bring in a seasoned vet, and up until the last couple seasons, he's been extremely, extremely durable. So I I think it was a good trade for both sides.
Mm-hmm.
The Rams are not in that rebuilding stage. The Lions are. The Lions needed draft picks. Now, here's the thing that might blow your mind, 2Ks. But before we get into that, chat, let us know your thoughts. I see a few people hanging out. What are your thoughts on this trade? Who won? Do you like it? Do you hate it? I want to know your thoughts, and let us know, and we'll feature you on the show here real quick. But what would you think? What would you think, 2Ks? The Lions aren't done trading yet. The Lions actually moved Jared Goff for for some more picks and then draft a quarterback?
Yeah, I don't see it. I mean, if you're asking me the question if I think it's going to happen, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think that. I mean, I think in this draft with quarterbacks, you have Trevor Lawrence, and then you have a lot of question fields. I mean, or question marks. If you think that you're going to, draft Justin Fields, and he's going to be, the franchise quarterback, I don't see it. I just don't. I don't see his
Yeah,
game translating to the pros. When has an Ohio State quarterback ever translated to the pros?
true.
I mean, I've never seen it happen. So I'm not putting any trust in him. I think that Jared Goff he's a very serviceable quarterback. I don't think he's a great quarterback. I think he's somebody that can come in and maybe give you 3 years. Because the Lions have a lot of things that they need to address before they start, using first round picks on quarterbacks, unless it's a Trevor Lawrence caliber quarterback that, basically you can't miss. And this draft has Trevor Lawrence, and then there's a lot of question marks with these other quarterbacks, and maybe this year is just not the year to address that problem. So you take a guy like Jared Goff; he's very serviceable for you, and you play him at quarterback, and then in here, after this next season or after the year after that, then you're looking for a quarterback, or maybe it just works out. Maybe Jared Goff, comes to Detroit and plays really good football. I mean, we don't know. This guy was the number one pick of the draft a few years ago. So obviously to this point, we haven't really seen him play to that caliber or hold up to that number one overall pick. But at one time he was very respected and that. So who's to say? He was just maybe he was just in the wrong system, and getting him into the right system will change things. Getting him obviously, hey, I think Detroit fans are all going to agree with me on this. You have to get a running game going. I mean, look at when Goff was very good in LA, I think of the year that Gurley, he just went off, and he was, they ran that entire offense around him, and weren't asking Goff to go out and win games. They were just asking him to go out there and make the plays that he needed to make, and he had a very good season that year. But then you look at after they lost Gurley and after they lost, I'm trying to think of. No, they lost Gurley, and then then they just weren't. He just wasn't the quarterback. They were asking him to do way too much dropping back, and it didn't work out. So who knows? We'll see what happens. But I think it's a good trade for all parties. I think it's a good trade for obviously both teams, and I think it's a good trade for Stafford. Obviously, his time has wore out in Detroit, and he needs to get away from Detroit and move on. And I think you can kind of say the same thing about Goff. Obviously, hasn't been there near as long, but a change of scenery is going to be good for both of them.
And I wrote a blog earlier today about this, especially with Goff going to Detroit. And I'm not saying, we're not even sure what kind of offense Detroit's going to run because they have a whole new coaching staff. They have a whole new everything. Basically, getting, that's one of the reasons why they were moving Stafford was to kind of clean house and start fresh. And we've seen this time and time again where new face, new place, new system, new everything. I mean, look at Alex Smith when he went from San Francisco to Kansas City. Very successful. Even more recently, when we look at Ryan Tannehill going from Miami to Tennessee, went from a bum that everyone in Miami wanted to drown down there in South Florida to a top 7, top 8 quarterback in the NFL, just from new face, new place. Now, there's going to be a lot of people saying, well, he Goff is with McVay. McVay's this, offensive genius. Well, he can be an offensive genius and still have a quarterback that isn't producing. That's not the goal by any means, but needless to say, I think you're right. Obviously, I mean, what it boils down to is for both of them, new face, new place, and let's see what happens. Mm-hmm. And also, now that each place has a new face, how do we support them? Like you said in Detroit, they're going to need a running game. Maybe in LA, they grab a receiver or trade for a receiver or do something to bolster that receiving core to kind of help Matthew Stafford, because like I said, that they struck gold with Cam Akers last year, and we saw it in the playoffs. We saw it towards the end of the year. Kid's a stud. Kid is an
Yeah.
absolute stud, and they've got they've got a couple very reputable backs behind him. So obviously that's not the case. Maybe they probably don't have a first round draft pick this year, but let's let's see how they bolster the lineup behind both of them. Behind both of them,
Mhm.
I think that's going to be the key. And the wild card is let's see what that offense is going to look like in Detroit. Period.
Yeah.
So we shall
Yeah.
see. We shall see.
And getting back to Goff and the McVay situation is you got to and thinking that yeah, McVay is one of the best offensive minds in the game, and if Goff can't get things going in that offense, what's the problem? What you got to remember that Jared Goff was drafted by the Rams in 2016. McVay came in as the head coach in 2017. So
True.
it's not like McVay was part of that draft of bringing Goff in, and they tried to make it work. It didn't work. They haven't. I mean, yes, they got to the Super Bowl, but it was a pretty dismal performance when they did get there
So
offensively.
one of the lamest
And
Super Bowls ever.
yeah, absolutely. But so Goff is really not. He's not McVay's guy. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested to see. I think that McVay kind of has who he wants now in Stafford. Obviously, if you're giving up, you're giving up 2 first-round picks and a third-round pick, you're giving up a lot. So McVay has to think very highly of Stafford. So yeah, I'm really curious to see it. And in my opinion, I got to think that the Rams are going to, with the defense that they have, and now bringing over a quarterback like Stafford and basically all the same guys being there
Mm-hmm.
on offense next year, and then a running back and Cam Akers who kind of just second half of the season really showed himself as the featured back there. I think if you're a Rams fan, you got to be excited. To me, I think they're one of the favorites there to be in the Super Bowl next year.
I mean, Stafford's not far removed from throwing for 5,000 yards a year.
Mm-hmm.
So not with those running backs, he doesn't have to. They have to do that, but
Yeah.
he's not far removed from that, and can be a perennial 4,500 yard guy every year. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like I said, it's going to be curious to see the next move because the big moves drop. What's next? What's next?
Mm-hmm.
And what's next for us, ladies and gentlemen? You like that segue, 2Ks? Ha! And we're there's really no easy way to transition from a blockbuster trade to NCAA hoops, and we're gonna break it down because obviously we're in Michigan, and 2Ks. Finally, one of your teams is winning.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's talk Big
Except
Ten
for
hoops.
they're not winning the COVID battle right now. They're
No.
currently under basically a two week lockdown where they can't do anything, can't even practice in person, can obviously can't play. So that's kind of a pretty big bummer for them. But
I think
up until that point,
I think when it
and one
comes
of
to
the
that, everyone's over against that.
yeah, yeah. but but no, up until that point, they obviously play in the best conference in college basketball. The Big Ten, I think, it's proven that
Hands down.
there's not a conference in college basketball this year that can even really compare to them. I mean, in some conferences, you might have like the top 2 teams. Maybe you could say you can make a bid for them being better than the top 2 or 3 teams in the Big Ten. But as far as a conference top to bottom, there's not a conference that's even close. I mean, you're going to see probably double digit teams coming from the Big Ten in the NCAA tournament at the end of the year. So, I mean, the conference is just every single conference has like I don't want to say an off night, or a bye week, but basically a few games that you can just basically chalk up and say, yeah, we're going to win that game. And the Big Ten doesn't have that. Every single night, you have to bring the best game in order to, or otherwise you're going to get knocked off.
Mm-hmm. And the last projection I saw, Tom Lenardi had 11 Big Ten teams in the tournament. So, kind of goes to show you exactly your point. There is no bye week. There is no. I mean, it basically like Big Ten football where they beat the shit out of each other.
Mm-hmm.
They absolutely beat the shit out of each other. But Before I forget this point, I've been watching a ton, a ton of NCAA basketball, and I have to admit, and maybe it's just me that I don't. It seems like because it used to be, speaking of beating the shit out of each other, the refs would just kind of let the Big Ten bang around, and if it was totally egregious, we'd get a whistle.
Hmm.
Seems like to be in a little more ticky tack this year,
Hmm.
and I don't think a lot of the Big Ten players, coaches, anything are used to that.
Hmm.
Now, should you officiate all the games the same? Yeah, sure. But when you have a conference that's known for this, I would think sometimes you swallow the whistle on some of the little things and worry more about the big egregious ones. But like I said, maybe it's just me that noticed it. Maybe I'm completely off base here. But yeah, just next time you watch a Big Ten game, keep an eye on it and let me know if you agree,
Hmm.
because maybe, like I said, probably I'm probably the only one that noticed it. Maybe I don't know,
No,
but
I noticed it, and I've noticed it for the last 5 6 years. The Big Ten was always called differently. They let a
yes,
lot more go. You were able to play a lot more physical in the Big Ten than watching any other conference on TV. And I think, but when I think when and I want to say some of these coaches in the Big Ten had to have been involved in it and had a little bit of a say in it. Like we got to start to call something and kind of even it up a little bit to other conferences, because I think it really worked as a disadvantage for the Big Ten when they
sure.
got to the March Madness tournament.
Hmm.
The games were officiated totally different than what they were all season long for all Big Ten games, and so the play style had to completely change. I've said that for years. I mean, you look at teams, some of these teams, like like take a Michigan State for instance, a team that Izzo teams normally play very very physical.
Yep.
That's just the way that they play. They're going to play physical. They're going to play great defense.
Your favorite
And
team
then
in
they're
the
going
world.
to yeah, but that's just the way that Izzo coaches.
Yeah,
But then
yeah,
and that's the way they play, and it translates to them winning a lot of games in the Big Ten. But then when you carry it over to the tournament, they can't necessarily play that style. I mean, I think that the officiating kind of takes them out of the style that they've played all season long, and it changes. And that's something that, I mean, and it could be said for basically the entire conference. I mean, you watch some Big Ten games, especially 2 3 years ago, and you watch teams like a battle between Michigan and Michigan State when both teams were very good, or Michigan and Ohio State when both teams were very good. Those teams just beat the shit out of each other, and the refs just allowed everything to go. And I mean, you have to. I mean, trust me, I hate it. I hate watching games when everything is called, and you watch, especially when college basketball starts to look like an NBA game out there. But
yes.
damn, you got to call something. And this year, I think just from top to bottom, watching all the games, the officiating has been way better.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, I just, I just started noticing it the last couple of weeks that, man, this is different, and it was more, believe it or not, it was more audio with the whistles rather than watching the game, and
And you've
it's,
seen it, and we've been able to see it in the scoring. You look at
mm-hmm,
games now. I mean, pretty much all the games that we're watching in the Big Ten, you're seeing teams scoring up in the 80s and teams scoring in the high 70s. Man, 3 or 4 years ago,
50s
there
and
was a lot of
60s.
games, yes, in the 50s and 60s. And I mean, at the end of the day, we want to see games where there's more scoring in it than watching a game that's basically a football score. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
No.
to me, them the way that they've made the changes, and they've started calling more, not getting out of hand, calling everything, and not allowing kids to flop and all that shit, but
Yeah.
just calling the game the correct way, and it's turned into way better basketball.
So besides your Michigan team, which is the kind of the shocker team that's on the rise in the Big Ten?
I mean, I got to say Ohio State. It
Mm-hmm.
pains me to say that, but before the season started, I think everybody kind of knew with Garza coming back at Iowa, they were going to be
Yep.
very hard team to beat. Wisconsin's always up there. I mean, that's just the way they've been like that for 20 years now. It just seems like that team is always somewhere there in the top 10, right around that area. Illinois, we kind of knew about what they had coming in, but nobody was talking about Ohio State. A lot of people kind of had them, kind of chalked them up with Michigan, kind of middle of the pack to start the season, and not even really being relevant all season long. And to me, at this point right now, um, Michigan and Ohio State might be the two best teams in the Big Ten, in my opinion.
I'm going to throw a sneaker in there and say Purdue.
Yeah,
Purdue,
and they play very good defense. They play really good
yeah,
defense.
and
They struggle to score though.
it seems like ever since like Robbie Hummel, going back to him, they're always like one player away from being fucking amazing. And when Robbie Hummel was there, if he played, they were badass. If he was hurt, they sucked. So to see them at 7-4 in the conference and 12-6 overall, I got to give them the nod. And then I've actually watched a couple of their games, and you're right. The scoring isn't always there, but defense travels, man. Defense
Mm-hmm.
travels, especially in the tournament. Especially in the tournament. So, and I'm gonna lay this one up on a platter for you, 2Ks. Who's the biggest disappointment in the Big Ten?
uh, it's Michigan State easily. It's
How big of
just
a boner do you have since I asked that question? Knowing your love
oh,
affair with Tom Izzo.
you know, in all honesty, it's kind of I like it. Don't get me wrong. Trust me, I root for the opposing team pretty basically every time Michigan State takes the field in anything. I don't give a shit if it's a game of field hockey. I'm still rooting for the other team. But at the same time, this conference is so good. I mean, there's so many really good teams in the Big Ten, and they just beat each other up because they're so good. And when you start talking about a conference that possibly could take double-digit teams to the tournament at the end of the season, and it kind of pains me to say that Michigan State's probably not even going to be in that conversation.
No.
They're probably not going to be in that conversation. I guess in a way, it makes me happy because I won't have to listen to all these Michigan State bullshit about Mr. March and all that bullshit about Izzo. March is when they come out, and so I don't have to listen to that. But at the same in the same breath, um, I'm a Big Ten fan. I try to root for all the teams in the Big Ten, for the most part, and I want to see them. I want to see. If I had it my way, I'd like to see every single team in the Big Ten play in the tournament at the end of the year. But so, I mean, yeah, I would like to see Michigan State at least be decent, but at the same time, it doesn't hurt my feelings all that bad.
Well, as it sits right now, they're 2-6 in the conference, and they're only ahead of Nebraska, which is 0-5. So Northwestern, Maryland, Penn State, Minnesota, Indiana, all ahead of them. I watched a game. I want to say it was early this week against Rutgers, and Michigan State had like a ungodly amount of maybe it's only 17 games in a row, but Rutgers demolished them.
Mm-hmm.
Rutgers absolutely demolished Michigan State, and Michigan State had we just got done talking about this, the scoring difference now between 3 or 4 years ago in the Big Ten, going 70s and 80s down from or up from the 50s and 60s. Michigan State had 28 fucking points in the second half. 28 points. It was horrible. I flipped on the game today and they were playing Ohio State, which, like you pointed out, Ohio State's a very good team.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like, up until towards the end where Michigan State kind of made a little run, but they were down by 20 the whole fucking game.
Mm-hmm.
And, I guess every program's allowed a rebuild every now and again. I get that. Michigan State lost, quite a bit of leadership, quite a bit of talent, to the NBA or the D League or wherever they ended up. But they're no longer there. Let's put it that way. But kind of keep that in mind because we're going to bring back this point a little bit later. So keep that in mind. So as we look forward to Ks, I kind of rely more. I kind of rely more on you and the especially the Big Ten hoops here. But like like I've said, I've been on the bandwagon for your Wolverines. I love watching them. I love watching what Jalen's doing over there, or Jawan Howard, excuse me. What he's doing over there. He's got everything going in the right direction, not only for this year, but man, you talk about building a program and building a program quickly. Quickly. This is what, his third season?
Hmm. No, second.
Second. Okay, so even
Yep.
better. Even
Yep.
better. And then going in next year, he's got an amazing recruiting class coming in.
Hmm.
So as a Michigan fan, 2Ks, you should be stoked as shit because yeah, I think this is I think Joanne's going to be around quite a while, and I think this M that's sitting on top of the Big Ten is going to be there for quite a while, or at least very very close to the top. So you know, you know what, you've been tormented enough, my friend. You need you need a team that at least is contending, and you know, as Lenardi points out, is going to be a number one seed.
Hmm.
So, and then unless Izzo pulls something out of his ass very very soon and goes on a very long run and strings together a lot of wins and stays COVID healthy, this team's gonna miss the dance for sure.
Hmm.
Because when you're there's what 14 teams in the Big Ten. When you're sitting at 13, eh, that's no dice. That's no dice.
Hmm.
That's no dice. And then I guess the best part is if you are a Michigan State fan, I've never heard anyone say that Tom Izzo needs to be fired. I've never heard anyone utter those words in my entire life so far. Maybe the clamoring start after this season, but have you ever heard anyone say that, 2Ks?
No,
No.
no. In all honesty, I've never really have seen like a college sport coach more loved by his fans than in football. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe you can speak for Alabama fans talking about
Sure.
Saban, but he ranks right up there. I mean, I can't remember the last time I've ever heard a Michigan State fan talk poorly
No.
of Izzo. Just can't.
No.
Now I've heard a lot of people on my side of it talk a lot of shit about
Oh,
Izzo,
sure. Sure.
um, but no, I've never heard it.
There's one big difference between Izzo and Saban. A lot of championships.
Hmm.
Izzo has what, one?
Hmm.
Been to the Final
Yes.
Four a lot.
Hmm.
Been to a couple other title or national championship games. Only one title. Last I checked, Mr. Saban has what, 6 or 7 of those on his mantle down in Alabama.
Yeah, and basically what, like 11 years, 12 years.
Yeah, yeah. So kind of,
Basically that's like Tom Brady numbers.
yeah, kind of a big difference between the two. However, fan base is a fan base, and I mean, whatever he's done, he's got the Michigan State faithful drinking that Kool Aid, and I, I don't think he's done by any means. I just think it's a down year. You know what? I didn't do any research to see what his recruiting class looks like, but I have a feeling that they'll be back and be relevant before we know it. Before we know it. All right, so 2Ks. Let's get into some top 25 hoops. And I wish we had some cool music to transition to, but I haven't figured that out yet. So, let me get my tab open here. So, the top 25 to me, and correct me if I'm wrong. And I'm gonna say this with kind of not necessarily tongue in cheek, but right now it seems like Gonzaga and Baylor, and then everybody else. Does it seem like that? Does it seem like that to you, or am I just making this up?
Man, I mean, as much as we've talked here lately about Michigan and how good they are, I would put Michigan in the same category as them, and I would put Villanova in that same category as
Yeah.
well. Villanova's has had to battle through COVID probably more than any team. Any team. I think they've been shut down 2 or 3 times total all season long for a week or 2 week spans, and have been able to, get back together and get things going again, and then they just continue to win. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the thing with Gonzaga, yes, to me, as far as the eye test, I think they're the best team in basketball right now as far as what I've seen so far. But it's so hard to get a true gauge on them because they don't fucking play anybody.
Right.
They don't play anybody year in and year out. They don't play anybody. Yes, they play some good teams in the beginning of the season. In the first week or two of the season, they played really good teams. This year, I think they played. I want to say they played Iowa, and then I
They
think
were
they played
supposed to play
Kansas
Baylor, and
also.
it was
Yes,
COVID
that
out.
game was postponed, but I think that they played Kansas to start the season, and then they went and they played Iowa. But that I don't really. It's hard to really compare college basketball teams in the first month of the season.
Sure.
Because so many teams really improve, and then there's also teams that kind of backtrack. And Gonzaga, they're undefeated. They've won. I mean, they beat everybody they won those 2 games against Kansas, who's they're a very good team. Iowa obviously is a very good team. They won those games. But since that, who the fuck have they played? I mean, can we really? How are
Pepperdine.
we able to sit here and watch them beat up on teams that are not really any fucking good at all?
No.
And expect and I mean, yes, eye test. I think they're really good. But when they play teams like Pacific and San Diego and Pepperdine and St. Mary's and Portland, like those fucking teams suck. So
Right.
how good are they? If Gonzaga was playing in the Big Ten, I don't think I could sit here and say that they would be undefeated right now.
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. But they would, to me, they would still be extremely competitive. They would probably be slotted right behind Michigan or right behind Michigan. I have a feeling they'd have more than one loss.
Mm-hmm.
But at least with Baylor, they play in the Big 12. Big 12 is at least a lot more competitive than the whatever conference Gonzaga plays in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, and then, speaking of the Big 12, Texas is number 5. So at least there's some competition out there in the Big 12 that we can kind of gauge Baylor at. And what shocks me is that looks like there's 64 votes that vote for the rankings, and all but 3 of them voted for Gonzaga. The 3 that didn't voted for Baylor. So the only thing that sucks about Gonzaga is every time I fill out a bracket, those motherfuckers fuck me so bad. It's either I'll pick them to go far and they lose in the second round, or I'll pick them to lose in the second round and they go to the Final Four. And it's like, God damn you, motherfuckers. But no, they seem to be on paper a very complete team. They can shoot threes. They've got the big guys that can bang on the inside. They play good defense, but like you pointed out, they're playing defense against what would be very, very talented high schoolers maybe. And Villanova, I mean, they've, like you said, everything that they've overcome, got to give them a nod. But I have a feeling that this year's this March Madness tournament's going to be fucking insane.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. There are more good teams that could win, which is contradictory to what I said in the beginning. There's more teams that could bring home that trophy than probably the last couple years. Usually it's one of 3 teams that are gonna that it's gonna obviously gonna be one of 3 teams. But I think there's more than a handful as it stands right now. I mean, Ohio State's ranked number 13, Wisconsin 14, Kansas 15. And one of the sexiest picks around is Florida State at 16. Alabama at 9 is playing fantastic ball, even though they just lost. But man, and it seems like any one of those teams that I mentioned could get hot and just carry it through the tournament.
Mhm.
You know, knock on wood that everything goes according to plan.
Mhm.
But one thing that I wanted to bring up that you and I were chatting about the other night, 2Ks, is I did a video because I can't remember what the hell date it was. But if you look at the top 25, what is in here that is usually always in here?
Michigan State,
Michigan
Duke,
State, Duke,
Kentucky,
Kentucky. I mean, there's North Carolina.
North Carolina. Yes.
Where's all the blue bloods?
Hmm.
Where is all the blue bloods? Looking here, probably the highest ranked, what I would consider blue blood, Kansas at 15.
Hmm.
So,
I mean, yeah, yeah. It's. I'm trying. I guess I can kind of consider. I ripped on them a little bit because they don't fucking play anybody. But I think at this point, in all honesty, you have to consider Gonzaga a blue blood. I mean, Mark Few has been. I mean, that team has been there around the top 10 for how many consecutive years now? I mean,
yeah,
yeah, you can say that they don't get it done come tournament time, but they're always fucking there. I mean, if they're not a 1 seed, they're always a top 3 seed when they gets to the tournament.
yeah. And I mean, but here's I was bringing that up to kind of be like, all right, well, is the game maybe passing these old guys by? You can kind of draw a correlation between the new head coaches. I mean, we said Juwan Howard's been there for 2 years. His team's four.
Hmm.
I guess Villanova. Before we jump ahead,
Yeah.
Villanova. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So I apologize, Villanova fans. I apologize, but if you look at NFL coaches, there really aren't a lot of older NFL coaches. I mean, Andy Reid's still doing his thing. Um, Pete Carroll's doing his thing. But the vast majority of what once those teams or once those coaches kind of lose their grasp on everything, where do they go? Young coordinators. Young coordinators, and that maybe these recruits, these kids aren't necessarily sold on someone that's been there forever. I don't know. I wish I had an answer. So 2K crew, if you could put in the comments what the hell do you think? Help us out on this because there's too many of them right now for it to be a coincidence. Is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
There's
No, and we're on the
something
same
that's
point.
going on that, and I'm not saying it's a big conspiracy or any shit like that. There's just something going on, and like Roy Williams has been. It's been a couple years since North Carolina was good. Jim Boeheim, his Qs are either really high or really low. So
Yeah.
that to me, there's nothing out of the ordinary in Syracuse.
Hmm.
Duke being out of the top 25, that's something to say.
Hmm.
Calipari's team is getting their ass whooped every fucking night. That doesn't happen.
Hmm.
Yes, he gets his group of freshmen. They take a few. They need to mesh. Once they mesh, phew, bam, they go on a hot run and they can't be beat.
I
That
mean,
hasn't happened yet.
you can't shy away from what we've mentioned as far as all these young coaches that you have to think that they're better recruiters.
They
They're
have to
better
be.
recruiters, and they're able to land these guys that I mean, you could there for years and years. You could just kind of chalk up Coach K was going to have a top 2 or 3, most years the best recruiting class year in year out. I
Right.
mean, he was going to have 3 or 4 one and doneers that were going to be there on campus for 1 year. They were going to go chase a championship, and you could say the same thing about Kentucky, and you could say the same thing about North Carolina,
Yep.
and you could say the same thing about Michigan State. They were always going to recruit, the Midwest and bring all the best players in the Midwest. We're gonna end up there. And now all those you think about Villanova, and there you got Jay Wright, the coach there. So he's a great recruiter.
Yep.
Michigan, obviously, you bring Juwan Howard. You knew. I mean, we talked about that as soon as Michigan hired him. How good of a recruiter he was going to be. He's young. He's been around the NBA system. He's been around Pat Riley for how many years now? He's been in Eric Spoelstra's system, who's proven that he's one of the best coaches in the NBA. And then you look at the team right behind Michigan in the standings, Texas. Shaka Smart, another young coach, gonna recruit. He's done that. You look at a young coach in Virginia. Virginia's been one of the better programs these last few years.
Yeah.
And Tony Bennett's the coach there, another younger guy, great recruiters, proven that. I think it's all of these teams that, when you look at, it was always Duke and it was always Kentucky and it was always North Carolina and the same teams, and they just kept on recruiting and reloading every single year. Now we have 20 teams. We have 20 teams that I'm looking at that could possibly get hot or could possibly go and win this thing.
Oh yeah.
To where 5 years ago, I think we got to tournament time most years and there was like 4 or 5 teams. You look at brackets. And there would be you could probably pin it down to about 4 teams that were on everybody's bracket and every pool that you'd get into. Now, you can't say that. Now you get into that and there's about 20 different teams in a pool that you get into. And I think that has affected everything and it's turned it into more of a level playing field. And I mean, it's, to me, in my opinion, it's nothing but great for college basketball.
Oh, I can't argue that one bit. No. Let's see if some of the NCAA hoops guys can put something in Nick Saban's Kool-Aid to where he starts slowing down. But I highly doubt that. But no, I think you're 100% right.
The thing with football is you build up football coaches and programs. They build such a big staff. I mean, you might have 10 different people on your staff that are doing recruiting. I think basketball it's more pinned down to 2 or 3 guys doing the recruiting. So
sure.
Yeah, you look at a guy like Coach K in Duke. What is he, 74, 75 years old?
He's got to be that. Yeah.
There's no way that he's recruiting now like he was when he was in his 40s and 50s, and
no.
And he just can't do it anymore. And the same thing could be said for Izzo. Izzo's got to be in his mid to upper 60s now.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, it obviously doesn't help. One thing that does really make me laugh is the coaches, like I've seen reports here the last week or so from Coach K. Well, Coach K's kind of been crying all season long.
Yeah.
But Izzo kind of chirped up a little bit I think it was last week, about conference tournaments possibly not being a good idea this year, and just with all the COVID restrictions and all that. Bullshit. You guys wouldn't be saying that if you look back a couple years ago when Coach K was spoiled enough to have Zion and Barrett and all those guys.
Cam Reddish.
Coach K wouldn't have been saying that shit then, but just because his team's a bag of shit this year, they'll spout off and say, well, we shouldn't be doing this and we shouldn't even be having a season. Oh, fuck off. Just because you suck this year.
It's in the safety of the kids.
Yeah, own up to that and stop using that as your excuse, to get out of it. That's what that makes me laugh.
You don't. What it boils down to is you don't want this year on your record, there, brother. That's what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what happens.
Just own it that you suck. You suck this year, and chances are you'll probably be shoving it back in my ass next year because you'll recruit 3 or 4 of the best players in the nation, and be at 2K. Shut the fuck up. But right now, own up to it. Stop coming up with all these bullshit lines about shouldn't be playing and all that. Well, if you feel that way, Coach K, then get the fuck out. Retire and get the fuck out.
But you know what? I mean, if you kind of look at it, if you are going to have a shitty season, why not have it this year? So you have it. So you have a quote unquote excuse. So
yeah,
I guess it's good timing if you are going to have one. I guess it's good timing. I'm not saying that's a good excuse, but I think I think you're right. And it's I'm sure this happens. I'm not gonna say all the time, just because it's not really a thing all the time. But rollover in coaches, I mean, it has to happen. People can't coach forever. I just think we have a group of basketball coaches, and in particular, they're at, they're at the pinnacle. They're the blue bloods. They're the ones that are the best of the best year in and year out. That I'm sure there's 2 or 3 people on Coach K's staff that are young, chomping at the bit, waiting for that fucking job.
Mhm.
And it's gonna happen sooner or later. Coach K's got to hand the keys over sometime.
Mhm.
Coach Cal's got to hand the keys over sometime.
Yeah.
And same with Roy Williams, same with
Yep.
Calhoun, everybody. And these
Yep.
these guys aren't young at all, and I'm sure their job is very stressful. So it adds more age to them. Even take for instance Coach K when he was coaching the Olympic team, that had to take stuff out of him too. So I just think it's very very. It's very odd how it's all lining up right at the same time. I guess is what I'm saying. Instead of
Mhm.
one program, I'm not going to say depreciating, but not playing as hot as they used to be, where like it'd be just Duke. It's 5 or 6 teams that this is happening to all at once, and it's more like a wave rather than like a trickle. And
Yeah.
like I said, I just find it odd that it's all happening all at once.
Yeah.
And
No, and I think it just has a huge. What plays such a big factor in it is, like I said earlier, we have so many good programs that are developing, so many
Mhm.
good young coaches, and it's not that they're all young. I mean, there's some coaches that have been doing it for a year, or maybe on their second or third tenure somewhere else, and where they started.
Mhm.
But there's just so many good teams, and I mean, as a college basketball fan, I get it. Football is obviously a way bigger platform. I mean, it's safe to say there's a lot more football fans out there than there are basketball fans. But
Sure.
if you're a college basketball fan, the parity that college basketball has right now, in my opinion, it's so much fun to watch because there are so many good teams. I mean, who the fuck is? I know I am, and I got to think that most of the people that listen to us are probably pretty damn sick of Alabama, winning championship after championship in football, and
Except
Clemson
for
always
Sean
fucking
Graham's.
being there, and Ohio State, and it's always the same damn teams over and over
Mm-hmm.
and over again. And in basketball, it's somebody different all the time. I mean,
Yep.
yeah, you have your quote unquote blue bloods who seem to be there, a lot, but man, there's different teams every single year. There's always like that, 4 or 5 kind of surprise teams that nobody really was talking about when the season started, and they're there. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
when before the football season even started last year, I think we all knew it was going to be Alabama, and we all knew that Clemson was going to be there. We all had an idea that Ohio State was going to be there. So the only team that really kind of surprised us was Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Well,
Even
there's just not any excitement in it.
even as an Irish fan, I was shocked that they were there. So,
Mm-hmm.
but no, it's I to kind of put a bow on this. I guess everyone's going to be a fan of I'm not going to say the changes, but the way the landscape of the NCAA basketball top 25 is. Everyone's going to be happy except for Duke fans, Kentucky fans, the blue blood fans, the ones that we talked about, except for Michigan State because they have this weird attraction to Michigan State basketball, even when they're horrible. But
That's
regardless,
one thing. That's one thing I will give about all Michigan State fans is they got an attraction to their fucking teams every year, and it doesn't
probably
matter
Lions
how.
fans too.
Yeah, I mean, that might be what it is, and us Michigan fans are kind of falling into that too. I mean, yeah, our basketball team's doing all right, but I think anybody that lives in the state of Michigan is just like, yeah, all of our teams basically suck ass, so,
Not,
we're just gonna. I mean, what do you do? So yeah, it's
could always root for Notre Dame,
yeah, fuck that.
even though their basketball team's fucking horrible this year.
Look, I'm not a Notre Dame hater, but
No, no.
I don't hate them. I obviously I don't root for them, unless they play against Alabama or something. But
Right.
or Ohio State or even Michigan State for that instance. I'd root for them over Michigan State any day. But no, I'm definitely not. You're not going to see me wearing any Notre Dame gear anytime soon.
No, I wouldn't expect it from you. However, even the Notre Dame ladies team, since Muffet retired, is still trying to find their way. Not to say they're doing horrible, but it's definitely not up to Muffet standards. So, but they're in good hands. Both the guys and the girls are in good hands. It's just like we say, a down year, just a down year. So and they're playing in a pretty not as deep a conference as the Big Ten, but the ACC. Nothing to slouch at, but we shall see what happens to them. Definitely not expecting them to make any tournaments or anything, that's for sure. Well, 2Ks. Let's get to the wrap-up portion. Anything that we missed? Any T's we need to cross? I's we want to dot? Anything you want to get off your chest before we get out of here, brother?
No. That's pretty much we covered it all.
Well, there's a couple things. First of all, I wanted to thank all of our subscribers because we did reach the 200 subscriber plateau. So I want to thank each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart. I think we're at 206, I believe, when I checked earlier. So thank you very much. I am going to start working on some new merchandise, so look out for that. And if you want to be one of the first to get them, hop on our Patreon, patreon.com/Turbo and 2Ks. Well, I will drop them about a couple weeks early before we drop them on the group. And if you want to be a part of the group, where is it? This is so hard. Down here. Facebook.com/Turbo or /groups/Turbo and 2Ks. And what else was I going to say? Oh, we are recording on Saturday this coming weekend, so we don't have to worry about recording early for the Super Bowl. We can just, 2Ks and I can chillax with our families. So the plan is to take care of that on Sunday, so I'm sure, or on Saturday. So I'm sure most of our content will be Super Bowl related. But 2Ks, I'm looking forward to something.
Mm-hmm.
You know what happens after the Super Bowl podcast? Baseball.
Yes. I'm definitely ready to start talking about some baseball.
I just said the word.
Especially there's some big things that happened this offseason that we really haven't had the opportunity to talk about.
There's a lot of shit we got to catch up on.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
A lot of shit we got to catch up on, and
I don't even really want to mention any of it right now because if I do, then we're going to start talking for another hour.
Yes,
but
I do have a boner, just so you know. I've got a baseball boner, which is always a positive. But yes, I'm looking forward to because there's someone that I just in passing I was talking to one of my friends and he's like, well, it's your fucking show. You can talk about whatever you want to. I was like, yeah, but we try to make it like relevant to what's going on. If they're
look, I love talking about football too. I can talk NFL, college football, just as much as I can baseball. I enjoy talking baseball more, but I mean, look, most of the people that listen to us, they want to hear about football when it's football season.
Sure.
I mean, so.
But I
got no problem with that.
And luckily, we have very the closest probably the 100 closest people to our podcast. They listen to our whatever content that we put out. They comment on it. They joke with us. We have our common, our core 100, which is fucking awesome. They could care less what the fuck we talk about. Because if we talk about something stupid, they're just going to make fun of us, which is fine. If we talk about something stupid, we deserve to be made fun of. But when we talk about stuff that's relevant and stuff that they like and that they're interested in, man. And believe it or not, we are, when it comes to our baseball episodes, they normally perform as good or better than our football episodes, which I'm completely shocked at. I would put money that our football episodes bring in more viewers and listeners than our baseball, but what do I know? I'm just a talking head. Well, I made that completely weird. So on that note, 2Ks, love you, brother.
Yes, sir.
Let's get out of here. And everyone, 2K crew, have a great weekend. We will talk to you next week. And as always, Jim Rome, we're coming for you.